Wolhaiksong is an organization that was created with the goal of finding a way out of the tower. Its members have been subtly interfering with the story and will no doubt play bigger roles in the future. But despite how important they will soon become, we still know very little about this group. So, I'm going to break down the untold story behind the formation of Wolhaiksong that the author has shared outside of the webtoon, the reason this organization is arguably the most powerful in the tower, and also explain all the members that have been introduced so far. Starting with the story of how a deep friendship and a shared dream to see the outside world led Ulek Mazino and Baekhyun, a character who has not yet appeared in the story, to form Wolhaiksong. According to the information the author has shared in his blog, Baekhyun was an orphan who wandered the middle area of the tower until one day when he decided to go into a forest to avoid contact with others. He ended up becoming one with the forest and lived there for a long time. Through living in the forest, he naturally learned how to control Shinsu. At some point, Hidon appeared before him. Hidon was interested in Baekhyun's abilities, so he decided to pick him to be a regular. Because of his talents, he quickly became a ranker, and returned to his forest now having grown beyond human constraints. One of the benefits of becoming a ranker is the eternal youth contract that they make with the guardian/administrator when they reach the 134th floor, which slows down the effects of aging. So Baekhyun ends up spending a very long time looking after his forest, which is said to be like a living animal emitting a mysterious atmosphere. Ulek Mazino, who at the time was still climbing the tower, hears of the existence of Baekhyun's forest, so he decides to check it out for himself. Very quickly, Ulek Mazino and Baekhyun become best friends. Baekhyun is especially interested in the world outside the tower that Ulek often speaks of. After hearing all of Ulek's stories, Baekhyun starts dreaming of living in the world outside the tower. Ulek was still in the middle of his climb, so he left the forest for a few years. During his absence, Baekhyun's ambition to live in the world outside the tower continues to grow. When Ulek returns to the forest as a ranker, Baekhyun confesses his passion to him. Ulek, delighted by his confession, asks Baekhyun to live with him, but Baekhyun declines the offer, saying that he cannot leave the forest, which was like his own life after having spent so many years living there. It is said that Ulek Mazino pounded his chest to show how strong he was, and then said this: "Then I will give this forest a pair of wings. I'll make it so that these trees can follow you everywhere." Baekhyun didn't take him seriously at first, thinking Ulek was probably just rambling because he was drunk. But Ulek was serious. He gave a shout that resembled the sound of thunder and absorbed everything in the forest. Eventually, the enormous forest shrunk to the size of a fist. Ulek then put the compressed forest in a box with wings and gifted it to Baekhyun. Baekhyun was very surprised and grateful, but there was a problem. The compressed forest was too heavy for him to carry, so he gave the box to Ulek to look after until they found a new home. And this winged box became the symbol of Ulek Mazino and Baekhyun's friendship. Later on, the forest was moved to the 77th floor. Rankers who heard of Baekhyun and Ulek Mazino converged on the forest. This eventually led to the formation of Wolhaiksong, an organization whose purpose is to find a way out of the tower, with Baekhyun as its leader. The name Wolhaiksong, which means the winged tree under the moon, originates from the story between Ulek Mazino and Baekhyun. Now that we've learned the history behind Wolhaiksong's formation, you might be asking yourself a couple of things. For example, what makes Wolhaiksong different from other organizations? How are they perceived within the tower? And more importantly, why exactly are they considered the most powerful group again? As opposed to a group like FUG, who is composed of many different factions, centered around the belief that the Tenget families and the Zard Empire must be brought down, Wolhaiksong is more of a social club, a tight-knit group of people whose objective is to find a way out of the tower. But yet, within the tower, Wolhaiksong is widely believed to be an anti-government organization like FUG. The reason they are perceived that way is because their goal of finding a way out of the tower is seen as progressive, and is therefore in complete opposition with the conservative ideals of the Zard Empire. But in reality, the group does not wish to take out Zahard and the 10 family heads. In fact, while the current political system is not ideal, it does offer the tower some form of stability. We've seen Ulek recently be against the fall of family heads because it disrupts the status quo and destabilizes the tower, which would in turn impede his search for a way out of the tower and maybe even put his friends in danger. Now, as for why they are considered the most powerful group, throughout the story we've heard some pretty wild statements about Wolhaiksong, with Hansung Yu stating that the power and influence of the group is so strong that even entangled families fear it, or Kun Hai Lok stating that Wolhaiksong is strong enough to threaten Zhao's army, which is the biggest and most dominant army in the tower. But while Wolhaiksong is indeed a strong and influential group, the majority of their perceived threat level comes from the presence of a single member, the irregular Ulek Mazino. Gustang even implies that the heads of Tenget families themselves do not see the organization as more than just a game or a deception. You now hopefully have a better understanding of Wolhaiksong as a collective, so it's time we learn more about each member individually. But before that, I want to debunk a common misconception that Yuli is a member. This misconception stems from the fact that Yuli gave a Wing Tree badge to Shibisu with instructions to pass it to Balm. But Yuri is not a member due to her title and responsibilities as a Princess of the Heart. She was, however, one of the Vankers present during the planting of the Wing Tree and formation of Wolhaiksong. And despite being a princess, Yuri maintains friendly relationships with the group since they get along with each other, which is why all the team members who traveled to the second floor with her were part of Wolhaiksong. She's also good friends with Ulrich Mazino and knew he would be interested in meeting someone else from outside the tower, which is the reason she wanted to give the Wing Tree badge to Baum with instructions to go meet Ulrich on the 77th floor once he became a ranker. And if you ever wondered what happened to that badge, Shibisu was finally able to pass it on to Baum after the workshop battle ended. But some fans, myself included, believe that Shibisu being the one that was given the Wing Tree badge may potentially be foreshadowing that he will at some point join the group, because in the Q&A the author mentioned that one of the regulars from season 1 will become a future executive of Wolhaiksong. Shibisu is a strong scout, the leader of an elite team of regulars which includes 2 princesses of the heart, and he has demonstrated his intelligence on numerous occasions, from expertly passing Han Song-yu's Zor test to helping a Vankier during the nest. So he would be a great fit as a master strategist coordinating the Vankers of Wolhaiksong to guarantee they achieve whatever mission they might have in the future. But enough speculation, let's break down all the members that I've been introduced so far, and at the end of the video I'll talk about the mystery surrounding Baekhyun and everything else the author has shared about him in his blog. But for now, let's start with Kuridan, who is actually the original owner of that Wing Tree badge. The bet he made with Yuli, which resulted in him losing it, can surprisingly tell us a lot about him. To remind everyone of the context of the bet, Yuli originally wanted to take the fastest route to reach the second floor, but after a discussion with her team, she decided they'll take another route, because along the fastest route, there are nests of white seal eels who breed in areas with high concentration of Shinsu, and most people would feel a great force exerted on them while going through such an area, which would greatly restrict their movements. When Yuli told Kuridan that she saw an unknown kid run through an area with high concentration of Shinsu without any resistance, Kuridan didn't believe her, and told her that if there's really someone who can move freely in such high concentration of Shinsu, then she could take his badge. Yuri herself has a very strong resistance to Shinsu, so she barely experiences any restrictions to her movements, to the point that she cannot understand what it would feel like to be restricted by density of Shinsu, while Balm, as an irregular, has an extremely high Shinsu resistance, so the amount of friction exerted on him in areas with high Shinsu concentration is negligible. Because of this, he was able to face the white steel eel during Hidan's test without any restrictions placed on him, and he was also not pushed back at all during the Roro Shinsu barrier test. Getting back to Kuridan, he originally believed that they were going to the second floor to start a war with Vankiel, and was disappointed when he discovered that wasn't the case, as he states he loves war. Kuridan places a lot of importance on his strength and on the fact that he's a member of Wolhaiksong, which to him means he's one of the strongest in the tower. So I would assume that losing his Wing Tree badge, which is a symbol that recognizes him as a member of Wolhaiksong, was a great loss, but he still upheld his promise in the end. Kuridan played a small but important role in the first season. Because Yuli is a princess of the heart, she couldn't directly interfere with Lopo Biaven, a member of the Royal Enforcement Division that was acting on orders sent out by the Zard Empire, and she also couldn't openly help Anak's daughter. So Kuridan acted on her behalf using a Shinsu technique to attack her remotely. Since Yuli didn't directly interfere and Kuridan didn't directly attack him either, there was no evidence for Ren to report, so Yuli was able to avoid any political complications from her actions. To explain what Kuridan did, he is a Dan Sursa, which is a sub-position of the wave controller. Dan Sursa means cut/break technique user and is also known as the breaker or the cutter. This Shinsu technique consists of applying great Shinsu pressure on a target to prevent them from moving, before using the force of a downward swing to apply even greater pressure, which eventually crushes the target after multiple swings. In this particular case, Kuridan smashed down his armor on a lighthouse, which, using the lighthouse teleportation technique, teleported the force close to another lighthouse near Ren in order to attack him remotely. With all this in mind, if you now look back at Kuridan's bet with Yuli, it's likely that the reason he couldn't believe her was because of his pride in his strength and the nature of his technique, which applies great Shinsu pressure onto others and is quite similar to the conditions one would feel in areas of high Shinsu concentration. Before I talk about Kuna Schling, who is the person that helped Kuridan take out Ren, I'm going to quickly touch on 2 other members who we know very little about. The first is a ranker from a branch of the Eurasia family who goes by the codename Miss Ice Strawberry. Despite her childlike appearance, it is implied that she is quite old, as she refers to Lore as young man. Eurasia Blossom, the head of the Eurasia family, is also said to bear a childlike appearance, so there is likely a connection there. The author also stated in a blog post that when people start to manipulate Shinsu at a young age, their growth sometimes stops before they become adults. In those cases, they will usually be treated as a child even after living for a long time. The second one is Mrs. Ice Strawberry's unnamed partner. He followed her around in all his appearances and didn't say anything, except for the time when Kun Hashling told them there might be a fight against a ranker, and all three of them protested they wanted to have some fun after Evan told them he'll take care of it. Kun Hashling also uses a code name and goes by Blueberry. He is a defected member of the Kun family and a scout. Throughout the first season, he is seen playing games on a portable console, and in early season 2 when Dedoro and Quant finally reach the 77th floor, they encounter a game center in the middle of a forest, which turns out to be owned by Blueberry himself, as becoming the owner of one was apparently his dream. But going back to the first season for seconds, he broke into and then proceeded to hack Aguero's lighthouses to find his friends who had been scattered over the examination grounds. And once Kuridan requested assistance, he then used Aguero's hacked lighthouses to teleport Kuridan's attack so they could take out Ren remotely. This was not the last time we saw his hacking skills, however, as during the end of the workshop battle, he hacked into the surveillance cameras above the Archimedes and the arena and broadcasted the footage of FUG's involvement to everyone. But the reason he ended up going there in the first place was because after Ulrich Mazino took a liking to Violet, he instructed Yuji, another Wolhaiksong member, to have someone keep an eye on him. And to Ashling's displeasure, it ended up becoming his responsibility. Ashling initially tried to dodge the mission, but he wasn't able to. And as he was wondering if he could pass it on to someone else, he remembered that Leroro and Quant were just next to him. So he recruited them as interns on the spot, with a promise that he'll take them to Wolhaiksong's base if they succeed in the mission. In that same Q&A I mentioned earlier, the author also shared Wolhaiksong's selection process. Members with more than 4 wings, such as Hashling, can recommend a ranker or a regular as a member, and it's then up to the executives of Wolhaiksong to decide whether they can join the group or not. But the reason Leroro agreed to the mission without hearing any of the details was because ever since the events of the last examination, he had been confused about Baum's mysterious disappearance. So he resigned from his position as a test administrator and traveled all the way to the 77th floor in hopes of finding out the truth about what had happened. While Eloro was fulfilling his mission of watching Violet, he noticed similarities between Violet and Baum, so he decided to infiltrate the Archimedes in order to meet him. While undercover as a guard, he ended up recruiting Hatsu. He needed help to stop Karaka's factions within Fog from turning Baum into a weapon by melting his body and the thorn fragment together with boiling acids. The trio of Leroro, Quant, and Hashling ended up becoming indispensable in helping Baum and his friends escape from refugee, with Leroro releasing the prisoners held on board of the Archimedes as a distraction to delay the boiling acid from being poured, and later fighting against a ranker from Fog to buy time for the regulars to escape in a ship prepared by Wolhaiksong. After escaping to a resort owned by the group on the same floor, Leroro ended up giving Donge to Hatsu as a reward for his help, explaining that the sword was a gift from Wolhaiksong that he had been tasked to deliver to one of Violet's friends that could make use of it. During that short break between arcs, we met 2 other characters who were affiliated with Wolhaiksong. One is Majek, a facilitator at a resort run by Wolhaiksong, who may or may not be a part of the group. And the other is a regular Tulalan who is a confirmed member, but considers himself to only be a spare in case something happens in the regulars area. Because rankers are forbidden from meddling with the business of regulars directly, many groups within a tower such as Wolhaiksong, Fog, and even the Zard Empire recruit regulars and assign them missions that only they can perform due to their status as regulars. Before I share some surprising facts about Baekhyun, the leader of Wolhaiksong, I'm going to quickly touch on the last 2 members we know of, who both ended up preventing one of Baum's friends from dying at some point in the story. The first is Yeon Woon, who is a ranker from the Yeon family. He was the one who saved Aguero from the coma he put himself in to prevent the bomb which had put inside him from detonating. But Yeon Woon wasn't always someone who was focused on saving others. A long time ago, he rescued one of his teammates with his flame. Well, they were technically teammates, but that teammate didn't treat him very well. After he saved them, however, they were able to become best friends. This experience made him realize that his flame shouldn't be used to burn people, but instead to help and rescue people. So he decided to join Wolhaiksong and wandered around the tower using his flame to help those in need. In case anyone forgot, Yeon Yivang, the head of the Yeon family, was gifted 2 types of remedial flames by an ancient master. One was a flame that can burn anything, and the other was a flame that can save anything. The flame got weaker over time, so most members of the current generation of the Yeon family only inherited an ordinary flame. but some direct descendants can inherit the power of those two primordial flames, and Yan Woon inherited the flame that can save anything. But there was a problem. Yan Woon is extremely naive and likes helping others so much that he ends up losing the power of his flame. To help someone that was being treated as a slave by a stronger tribe, he summoned all his flame power into a hammer and gave it to them as a gift so they wouldn't get picked on. But that person decided to use his flame power to take revenge and didn't give back the hammer when asked. Yan Woon couldn't steal the hammer back because he had naively given all his power to the hammer, and even if that wasn't the case, he had put a curse on the weapon that would destroy it completely if someone stole it from its owner. Shibisu ended up executing a master plan that allowed them to get the hammer back, and they were able to save Aguero's life using Yan Woon's flames. As a result of being awoken from his coma by the flame, Aguero ended up receiving a part of its power, materializing in a switch ability that allows him to heal all injuries and temporarily increase one's power. The second Wolhaiksong member who ended up saving one of Baum's friends is Yuje, who I briefly mentioned earlier. In the aftermath of the Yuri vs Karaka fight at the end of the Neyman Station arc, Yiwa and the swordsman Danwa fell from the bridge connecting the station to the Hell Train. They managed to survive getting caught in Yuri's rush shower attack thanks to the true flame of the Yarn family that were asleep within Yiwa's body, awakening moments before they were hit, and Yuje was able to save them from falling to their death afterwards. Quick side note on what happened to Yiwa: she is being held hostage by Yul and Kel, the two regulars who work for the captain and are affiliated with the Revolution, which is another group that will have a big impact on the story. Getting back to Yuji, while this isn't confirmed or anything, I've always considered him to be both Ulek Mazino's personal secretary and babysitter. For example, after they arrived at the floor of death, Yuji gave Ulek the special anklet that masked his power, along with a warning that it would break if he used more than 5% of his power, which Ulek Mazino just completely brushed off. So then Yuji told him that the boss said not to break it or Garem would dump him, which prompted him to be careful. And brings us to Baekhyun, the last Wolhaiksong member on the list. According to the information shared by the author, Baekhyun's real appearance is controversial. Normally, he appears to be an ordinary boy, but he sometimes appears as a tall young man. Some have also said that they have seen Baekhyun be tall enough to touch the ceilings of the tower. Baekhyun is ranked 9th in the tower's ranking. To quickly explain what that number means, once a regular reaches the top of the Zod Empire on the 134th floor, they are assigned a ranking, which is where the term ranker comes from. That ranking is determined after investigating and combining statistics such as a person's power, recognition, and influence. So the idea that the rankings are based on power alone is completely false. Baekhyun's high ranking is in large part due to his influence as the leader of Wolhaiksong rather than his combat abilities, but it cannot be said that they are lacking. After all, he is considered one of the most gifted wave controllers in the tower's history, and although Baekhyun is a wave controller who controls the battle and supports team members who are attacking others directly, his hand-to-hand combat ability is also said to be impressive. But because he only has fought in a limited number of battles with high rankers, the Vanko Administration Office, who decides on the rankings, isn't entirely aware of his combat abilities. Lastly, after becoming a high ranker, he was given a sobriquet or nickname by the Vanko Administration Office, but it is said that he refused it.